malpractice suits are quite common. In fact, a New England Journal of Medicine study 2 years ago showed that neurosurgeons face more malpractice suits than anyone. In fact, their number was that 1 in 5 neurosurgeons in this country get sued every year. So with a 25-year career in neurosurgery, it's no surprise that there's some suits out there.
So let's move into some of the insights you've garnered.
I'm sorry, y'all.
Your latest
I'm so happy
articulates that you actually have proof
you
that there's
understand that, you know, you live it off of black.
I think that proof is really in, it's important to point out that, you know, my story is one of tens of thousands of journeys that are out there, and not just from the last 50 years, which is the main thrust of near-death experience research, but going back thousands of years.
The stories of people that you've spoken to, the stories that have been recounted for eons, are they very similar to the ones you experienced when you were sitting in a hospital room in an ICU in a coma?
Yes, after my coma due to severe bacterial meningitis back in November 2008, I came out of that wanting to pay tremendous attention to those stories, and came to realize the more I got into that, not just the modern near-death literature, but the writings of mystics and prophets going back thousands of years, all have striking similarities about the nature of a fundamental reality of who we are. It's at the basis of our very existence. And these stories are coming out even today by the thousands. And I think that's very important, because you cannot explain them away with a simplistic materialist science idea.
Maybe if I can walk you through a little bit of this from my perspective. There's a lot of mystery, a lot of questions surrounding near-death experiences. So I'm going to offer you all science's best explanation so far. It involves your brain and understanding what happens to it as you die. Take a look. I'm holding the brain. Let's make it bigger so we can get a real close look. The last thing to shut off and die is the brainstem over here. But your brain doesn't all die at once. Even as your brain is getting less oxygen, synapses continue to fire. You might not see them on a brain scan, but it's happening. These bright areas are like the last few flickers of a light bulb. It's your brain trying to stay alive. Usually, these flicker out until everything goes dark. But when someone has a near-death experience, the brain turns back on, and they come back to life. Let me explain how scientists think about the near-death experience, especially how we explain the out-of-body sensation that so many patients have told us. So remember that little that animation I showed you, areas that are lit up. Imagine these areas that are lit up are where you see, where you feel, how you hear. But notice the areas in between those light areas of dark. That's the glue that holds our senses together. So what happens if we can see, but we can't connect that to how we hear or what we're feeling? All of a sudden, we are completely out of sorts, wandering around, not quite knowing where we are. That's that sense of being outside your body that so many folks seem to recount to us. That, I think, we have a scientific understanding for. But Dr. Alexander, your case is different. In fact, you didn't have exactly that process. You have this meningitis infection, that state of near-death. So how do you reconcile those? How do you compare them?
Well, I think my case is really the exception that proves the rule. It basically proves in many ways the validity of these other experiences. And in fact, a lot of the near-death literature is filled with cases where the brain was documented to be very far along in that death process, where you didn't have many flickerings left. And yet people were very aware and had an expansion of consciousness. That's something that completely defies our modern neuroscientific views of this.
You also read a lot about these shared death experiences that I had not heard of before. You say they're incredibly common. What are they?
I've had many people come up to me after my talks, and they've never read any of this literature, they've never heard of any of this, and they'll describe to me not just near-death experiences, but people come up and tell me shared death. What happens there is a bystander, someone who's at the bedside, either healthcare worker or family member. When a patient is dying, their soul gets sucked along on the journey, and it completely blows our simplistic medical pseudo-explanations about near-death experiences, about the tunnel and the light and seeing souls of departed loved ones, blows out of the water when a bystander with a perfectly normal brain, their soul gets sucked along on that journey.
What I was most intrigued by of all was the concept that we could actually access, recall memories of heaven even while we're alive.
We can.
We can.
We can.
How do we do that?
Well, I often tell people, you don't have to die, you don't have to have a near-death experience to get this. It's all by being a conscious being This is within all of us. The answers, the truth lies within us all. And so it's through meditation, and of course I do the work with sacred acoustics, and I've been able to return to those deep spiritual realms that I visited deep in my coma. But it does take the work. It's a daily practice for me, and that's how we can come to know it ourselves.
Let me take some questions from the audience. I'm sure many of you have similar thoughts as I do. Let's go over here first. How are you? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Eve Wilson. I had an experience. My uncle was in the hospital, and we went to go see him, and he said, you know, I think I'm going to die today. It was very weird because he wasn't that sick, but as the day went on, he got progressively worse, and then ended up in the ICU, and he cardiac arrested, and they were able to resuscitate him, but they didn't think that he was going to stay around much longer. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, we were standing next to his bedside. He sits up, full of energy, and he had just been in a coma a couple of seconds earlier. Pulled the tube that he had down his throat to help him breathe out of his mouth, and he said, "Hurry up and get my wife. I only have a couple of seconds." And we ran out to try to get his wife that was in a waiting room, and he kept saying, hurry up, they're only giving me a couple of seconds. We ran back in, and by the time we got there, he collapsed. They worked on him for over an hour, and he never came back again. Mm-hmm. Has it been your experience that people sometimes get a message that they are going to be going soon?
Oh yes, that's very much the case, that I think souls know, especially as they get close to that edge of leaving this physical existence. They know full well what is going on, and it's often at a time when the souls of departed loved ones appear to them to usher them across that threshold.
I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you for the question. One more question. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Doctor. Thank you. Good. Hi, my name is Carla. My question, it stems from my personal beliefs and in eternity and what happens to our souls after we leave Earth. I'd like to know your views. What do you think about reincarnation in particular? Anything about life after death?
I think that's a very, very important question. It turns out that the reality that I knew from my journey is that our souls come back again and again to get this right. It's that process of ascendance towards oneness with the divine. And in fact, I didn't realize that the scientific literature on reincarnation is very strong, but there are thousands of cases that they've uncovered of children with memories of past lives where there's really no other way to explain it other than reincarnation. And I think that's a beautiful question. I'm glad you brought that up because it's fundamental to our understanding.
Hope you enjoy the next life. So, Dr. Alexander, before you go, you obviously are convinced about heaven. As a neuroscientist, I'm fascinated talking to somebody who has a similar background, who's this firmly rooted in this belief. How has it changed how you live your life day to day?
Well, it really has changed everything. Once one comes to realize that we are all eternal spiritual beings, it changes everything. I've come to see health and disease, injury, those things, those hardships in life are often gifts. It's how we deal with them. If we manifest that love, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, and mercy, and share that with our fellow beings, that is how we can accomplish that most ready and straightforward ascendance of our souls in that journey of our souls towards oneness with the divine.
I think this conversation will change a lot of people's lives today. Thanks for being here. Dr. Alexander's new book, The Map of Heaven, is in bookstores now. I'll be right back.
Tell us, what are your thoughts on the afterlife?
It's hard for me to say, but I like to think that the afterlife is full of all the things that I loved on Earth, including a long list of non-Oz approved foods.
Share yours on Facebook.com/Dr. Oz. Coming up, health is becoming the big headline in the world of news. Fear, confusion, especially on the subject of Ebola. Dr. Oz answers your most pressing questions. Right here, right now. What do you want to know about Ebola?